Live from Melbourne, this is 7's Afternoon News with Blake Johnson.
Hello, first at 4 we have breaking news on a verdict in one of the biggest murder trials in Melbourne this year. A jury has just declared two men guilty over the Pran Love Machine nightclub shootings. Jade Vincent is at the Supreme Court. Jade, two innocent men were shot dead that night.
Yes, Blake, 37-year-old security guard Aaron Khalid Osmani and patron 28-year-old Richard Arrow, they were just chatting outside the Love Machine nightclub in April 2019 when they were both gunned down in this drive-by shooting. Three other people were also injured. The gunman, Jacob Elliott, fired 4 shots into the crowd outside the nightclub. Behind the wheel of that stolen Porsche, the getaway car, his mate, Alan Ferez. During this 5-week-long murder trial, Jacob Elliott claimed he'd never held a gun before, that he never intended to kill anyone and that this was an accident. He also claimed that he was ordered to send warning shots at this nightclub by his father, that being slain underworld figure Nabil Magni. It took just 5 days for this jury to deliver their verdicts. They came back finding the pair guilty of 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder for injuring those other people outside the nightclub. They also have a co-accused, a friend, Musa Hamka. He was found guilty of hiding the murder weapon. But Blake, these are young men, Jacob Elliott being 21, Alan Ferez 24. They're now facing the prospect of life behind bars.
Jade Vincent starting us off with breaking news today. Thank you. Premier Daniel Andrews is refusing to provide any more details after revelations he was grilled in secret by Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog. State politics editor Chanel Vella joins us now. Chanel, there are claims of a culture problem in the State Labor Party.
Well, Blake, this leaked interim report claims the Premier conceded that significant cultural reform is required within the ALP. But when it came to confirming his secret examination by IBAC, Daniel Andrews refused to comment. Operation Watts focused on failed power broker Adam Somyurek and the misuse of public funds. All up, 33 witnesses were called to give evidence. This report claims that the Premier was one of 26 who gave evidence in secret.
I'm not making any comment about those matters unless and until a final report is handed down. My answer will not change. It is grossly inappropriate for me to be commenting on a report that is not yet released.
Victorians deserve answers. It's their money that's being wasted. It's their mental health that's suffered for the last 2 years. And it's him who's been rorting the system while we've been suffering.
Meanwhile, Adam Somyurek has taken to social media to lash the anti-corruption watchdog, saying if Dan was grilled by IBAC, why wasn't it done publicly? 7 News has put questions to IBAC, including if they will investigate who leaked the report. We are yet to receive a response, Blake.
All right, Chanel, thank you. The cost of living is again dominating the election campaign with heightened concerns. The Reserve Bank will lift interest rates to combat soaring inflation. Jennifer Beshwari is in Sydney. Jen, the government says it's shielded Australia from the worst of COVID's economic shock, but Labor is vowing to go further.
Well, the economy was once again front and centre of the federal election campaign, with both sides trying to prove that they're capable of leading the country through this crisis. At a childcare centre in the Liberal-held seat of Banks in Western Sydney, Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers accused the Prime Minister of not doing enough to tackle rising costs.
This is a cost of living crisis, a full-blown cost of living crisis, and Australians are getting absolutely hammered by it.
Mr Chalmers also left the door open to giving one-off cash handouts later in the year if elected, and also extending the reduction in the fuel excise to help Australians that are still struggling.
Yeah.
Will you give one-off cash handouts to help ease the pressure for immediate cost of living relief, and will you extend the fuel excise?
Yeah. We would weigh all of that up, do the right thing by the budget and the economy, and particularly by Australians.
At a shipyard in Cairns in far north Queensland,
beautiful, that's him.
The Prime Minister faced repeated questions about his plans to manage soaring inflation.
We are taking action right now, providing real relief right now, because we've been able to have a strong economic plan.
Rebuffing suggestions the rising costs will damage his chances of re-election, saying you can't trust Labor to manage the economy.
Our strong economic management has enabled us to put a shield up against a lot of these pressures.
As attention turns to whether the Reserve Bank will raise interest rates next week.
I respect the independence of the Reserve Bank, always have, and they need to make the judgments they need to make in the best interests of the Australian economy. And I have no doubt they will do that.
But some economists believe the Reserve Bank could hold off.
What the Reserve Bank has consistently said is it wants to see evidence that wages are rising. And we don't get those wage data, the wage price index, to May the 18th. So the Reserve Bank could hold off lifting interest rates till June.
Well, Labor leader Anthony Albanese ends his 7 days of COVID isolation here in Sydney tonight. He'll return to campaigning tomorrow, heading out west for the official ALP launch in Perth on Sunday.
A Traralgon man has been cleared by a jury over the death of his ex-partner. Glenn Graham Martin's former partner, Gail Potter, was fatally struck by a car in her driveway in 2018. Today, a jury found Martin not guilty of failing to stop a vehicle after an accident. The court previously heard Martin and Potter had been arguing before the mum of two was hit. Organisers of the Targa Tasmania insist the event still has a future after a 59-year-old driver was killed yesterday. The man and his wife were in a 1989 Porsche 944 which went over an embankment. The car rally has turned fatal for the second year in a row after 3 people were killed last year. The rest of this year's Targa has been downgraded to non-competitive, meaning drivers will have to obey speed limits even on closed roads. Sydney's gang wars have claimed another life with a notorious underworld figure shot dead in the city's southwest. Mahmoud Ahmad had been warned by police he had a $1 million contract on his head. The gunman is still on the run. And a Deer Park man has been arrested and charged in relation to scamming more than 100 victims out of thousands of dollars. Police allege the 32-year-old used stolen identities in puppy scams, as well as false advertising on online marketplaces and pretending to be from the tax office. He faced court today and did not apply for bail. Vladimir Putin has threatened to use all the weapons at his disposal against any country that assists Ukraine. Sarah Greenold reports from Kyiv.
Well, Russia's defence ministry has released new video claiming to show cruise missiles flying over Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. The result, it says, the destruction of weapons supplied to Ukraine by the West. That new video, which Russia wants the world to see, has been accompanied by a new verbal threat from Vladimir Putin, who today said that if anyone intervenes in his military operation in Ukraine, the result will be lightning fast, adding that his goals here will be, quote, unconditionally fulfilled. Despite those threats, the West is actually ramping up its response, Australia included, sending 6 howitzers and ammunition, part of a $225 million contribution to the war effort. Meanwhile, Russia has cut gas supplies today to Poland and Bulgaria, those 2 European countries rejecting Moscow's demands to pay for gas using rubles. The EU has described this move as blackmail. In suburbs surrounding the capital here, Kyiv, places like Bucha, Irpin and Borodyanka, the Russian troops are no longer there, but the threat remains. Demining teams are currently working around the clock to find and destroy unexploded ordnance. We spent today with one of those teams, and we will bring you that story tonight at 6 o'clock.
America and Russia have completed a rare prisoner swap. Details are next on 7 News. Also, the diet debate. An iceberg lettuce now costs more than chicken nuggets. Is that part of the problem? And a new airline touches down in Melbourne. Stay with us live from our dock. Comanchero bikie boss Mick Murray has been charged with murder over the alleged execution of a Tony Mockbell associate in 2019. Cassie Servos has the details.
It's been more than 2 years since the brutal shooting of gangland figure Metat Razimi, but today a major breakthrough in the homicide investigation. Detectives today charged Comanchero bikie boss Mick Murray with 1 count of murder. The 44-year-old was arrested at his Listerfield North home in a pre-dawn raid. Metat Razimi was driving his car in Dandenong in November 2019 when he was gunned down and left for dead.
The vehicle had crashed into a pole in Dawn Avenue. As a consequence, the Homicide Squad of Victoria Police led an investigation, and that investigation continues and will continue beyond today.
Detectives also executed a warrant at a gym in Hallam just after 7 o'clock this morning as part of today's operation.
We know the 44-year-old male is connected to that gymnasium located in Hallam.
Today's murder charge comes after a lengthy probe by detectives. In November 2019, police charged a 27-year-old Hampton Park man with murder. 3 months later, a 29-year-old Endeavour Hills man was also charged with murder in February 2020. The bikie boss appeared briefly in a filing hearing this afternoon and didn't apply for bail. He'll be back in court again in August.
Soaring food prices could encourage families to select cheaper, unhealthier options. A takeaway box of 10 chicken nuggets is now cheaper than an iceberg lettuce. The cost of vegetables is up almost 13% over the past year. Beef is up by 12% according to the Bureau of Statistics. Let's bring in Robert Hunt from Dietitians Australia. Robert, how much of a problem is this?
Well, Blake, it's a big problem. This country, Australia, is one of the most food secure countries in the globe. Yet we have 1 in 6 adults and 1.2 million children suffering from food insecurity. This is outrageous. And we've got to do better, the community and government together.
You say more than 27,000 people die each year in Australia from unhealthy eating. What's the solution?
Well, it's a multi-pronged solution. It's a shared responsibility, but the government's got to show true leadership here. Now, we've seen some announcements during the election campaign about our policy, our call for a policy in national nutrition, but we haven't seen all the parties engage. It's a multi-pronged approach. It's all about farm to plate. It's about food labelling. It's about food access. It's about an education program. In this country, we've seen fantastic public health campaigns around tobacco with lots of money and a national strategy around physical activity. It's been 30 years since this country had a national nutrition policy. 30 years.
How much do you think we should be taking personal responsibility for what we eat, though?
Well, it's a bit like planning for your retirement, for your superannuation. You also have to plan for your health. If you start now, this is for people who are relatively healthy. Start now and improve your diet, improve your activity. The vulnerable groups are more tricky and they need support. The government needs to do more in the space of children, rural and remote areas, our First Nations, in our disability space. That's why we need this multi-pronged policy that brings everything together. It's not just agriculture. Very important. We need to produce our food, but it's equally about distribution, transport. It's about, as I said, labelling. About in supermarkets, why does every checkout in this country have sugary drinks and chocolate and sweets as the last thing you see before you pay for your lettuce, if you can afford it?
Fair point. Marketing rules. Rob Hunt from Dietitians Australia. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Blake.
There's been a rare prisoner swap between Russia and the US. A former United States Marine has been exchanged for a Russian pilot. Ashley Mullaney reports.
After months of high-stakes negotiations, the US has secured the release of the 28-year-old Marine in a surprising show of cooperation between the White House and the Kremlin. The moment was shown live on Russian state TV as Trevor Reed was handed over to US authorities at a Moscow airport, almost 1,000 days after his family says he was unfairly detained. Reed was arrested on a night out in Moscow in 2019 and accused of assaulting a police officer. Reed's family says his health has deteriorated while behind bars, but tonight they're simply relieved.
Finally, after waiting all this time, I'm going to be able to hug my kid, put my arms around him. I had a little bit of a panic attack when he told me he was going to spend the whole summer in Russia, so 9 months, and then now it's been almost 1,000 days, so I'm just excited to see him.
Moscow agreed to hand Reed over in exchange for Konstantin Yaroshenko, arrested in the US in 2011 for smuggling cocaine. Russian media showing the moment he was reunited with his family. All this raising questions about the fate of another American still being held, Paul Whelan, accused of spying, and two-time Olympic gold basketballer Brittany Griner, who was arrested for carrying vape pens. The State Department insists it's still working on those cases and says both remain a top priority.
Some lucky travellers are in the air as we go to air this afternoon on the first direct flight from Melbourne to Vietnam's capital, Hanoi.
Very convenient. Yeah, because before I had to transit either in Singapore or Malaysia. So now to have a direct flight from Melbourne to Hanoi is such a great relief.
From now on, we have one flight per week from Hanoi to Melbourne. But very short time, we will increase to maybe 2 or 3 flights per week.
New Vietnamese airline Bamboo Airways launched the direct route from Tullamarine this morning. In a new slapdown for Prince Andrew, authorities in York have stripped him of the freedom of the city. The City Council revoked the honour following the settlement of his sexual assault case. Up next, breaking news from the AFL, plus Cat star Patrick Dangerfield in doubt for a second week, and Bob Dylan classics delight the lunchtime crowd in the city. We're back here on 7 and 7 Plus shortly. This is a live look at our city right now. It's 21 degrees outside at the moment, and Jane Bunn's here with the weather later in this hour. Andrew McCormack's here with sport. Andrew, there's breaking news from AFL House.
There is, Blake. Thursday night footy is officially back. The AFL has just released the floating fixture for rounds 12 to 15 with 3 Thursday night matches in June. Richmond will host 2 of them against Port Adelaide and Carlton, both at the MCG. Essendon, meanwhile, will be thrust into the mid-season spotlight. They've got 3 consecutive Friday night games in rounds 13, 14 and 15. Still on footy in Melbourne, we'll know tomorrow morning if other stars will join coach Simon Goodwin and 3 premiership players in COVID isolation. There are fears more players could test positive ahead of Saturday's clash with the Hawks.
It is hard to manage, but we've done a pretty good job up until now, and I dare say we're still doing a pretty good job because it looks like only we have 4 names at the moment that are down, and there could have been more.
They'll have a training run tomorrow morning. The Dogs haven't escaped COVID either, with young forward Anthony Scott also out this week after testing positive to COVID. Meanwhile, Mitch Wallace is ready to return after the birth of his second child and the tragic death of his mother-in-law.
Mitch is desperate to play football now, and he'll definitely be playing at either AFL or state league level.
Luke Beveridge revealed Josh Bruce could return after the club's bye in round 13 following his year-long recovery from an ACL injury. Patrick Dangerfield is no certainty to return for Geelong's clash with Fremantle on Saturday. The Cat star wasn't spotted at the team's warm-up session this morning, recovering from a corked calf.
We're optimistic that he's going to be available. The question for us is whether we should play him, given the lack of training that he's had over the last month, really.
7 News will have the exclusive teams at 6:15. Jack Henry was ruled out. Chris Scott described his foot injury as frustrating but not long-term. Former Hawthorn coach Alistair Clarkson was spotted brushing shoulders with some NBA stars in California. Golden State guard Klay Thompson made a pretty grand entrance for Game 5 of the NBA playoffs, walking straight past Clarko, who was checking into security. The Warriors beat the Nuggets 102-98 on the back of 30 points from Steph Curry to advance to the second round of the NBA playoffs with a 4-1 series win. Meanwhile, Giannis Antetokounmpo had 33 points as the Bucks also advanced to beat Chicago 4-1. And England is poised to name Ben Stokes as its newest Test captain. Stokes is believed to have accepted an offer to replace Joe Root, who stood down earlier this month in the wake of humiliating losses in the Ashes against Australia and the West Indies. England's search for a new coach continues. Clarko, where in the world is Clarko? Where will he pop up next?
That was some really eagle-eyed spotting.
It was. But
those glasses have paid for themselves.
Well, let me just say for Clarko, he's getting paid $900,000 a year not to coach by Hawthorn, so he's on a nice little sabbatical, Clarko.
Not a bad way to spend this time. Naka, thank you very much. Cast members from the hit musical Girl from the North Country have performed some of Bob Dylan's most loved songs in the heart of this city. The performance was a sneak peek of the full show, which begins in Melbourne next week. The state opposition is calling for Daniel Andrews to stand down after a secret grilling. Opposition leader Matthew Guy joins us live next. And supermarkets warn grocery prices will just keep going up. 7 News continues in just a couple of minutes.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7's Afternoon News with Blake Johnson.
Hello again. Our breaking news this hour on 7. 2 men found guilty in one of the biggest murder trials in Melbourne this year. In the past 90 minutes, a jury has declared Jacob Elliott and Alan Fares guilty over the Pran Love Machine nightclub shootings. 2 men were shot and killed, 3 others wounded in the 2019 incident. We'll have more on this story coming up at 6. The state opposition wants Premier Daniel Andrews to stand down following revelations he's been grilled in secret about Labor's culture by Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog.
I'm not making any comment about those matters unless and until a final report is handed down.
Is it a corrupt and unethical government?
That's a ridiculous suggestion. My answer will not change. It is grossly inappropriate for me to be commenting on a report that is not yet released.
The Age reports IBAC has made no adverse findings against the Premier. Opposition leader Matthew Guy joins us live. Mr. Guy, why do you say the Premier should stand down when there are no adverse findings against him here?
Gladys Berejiklian did. It's good enough for the New South Wales Premier. Why wouldn't Daniel Andrews do the same? More importantly, Blake, just remember, he's not a backbencher. He's not just a passenger. This is the leader of the government that the IBAC has, the Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, has said has a culture of misusing public funds. And in private, the Premier has apparently agreed with that assessment to the Corruption Commission. Now, what kind of government accepts that they have a culture of misusing public funds, our money, not the government's, our money as taxpayers, and then goes on as if there's no problem? The smugness, the arrogance, we are coming out of COVID. We need to focus on recovering and rebuilding our state. The last thing Victoria needs is a government that is focused on itself and rorting the system to help itself, rather than focusing on our needs, our kids, our mental health, our jobs and our health system. That's the crisis that needs to be fixed in the state.
Now, you're talking about referring this to Victoria Police yourselves. What do you think that will achieve?
Well, it depends what comes out, as Premier says in that final report. But what I do know is that he can answer those questions now, but chooses not to. The Premier's responded to plenty of reports that have been midway through their process, but chooses on this occasion not to reply to this one because it's all about him. And like many things on this government, it is about him. It's about his government's treatment of Victoria as a plaything for themselves. It's not. This government is about all of us. We need to recover and rebuild and get out of the mess that this government created. These are the people who created the mess we're in. They're not the people who get us out of it.
Well, you famously or perhaps infamously had lobster with a mobster. Could you forgive Victorians for thinking politicians from all sides are the same?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's got absolutely nothing to do with the Corruption Commission finding that the government of the day is misusing public funds. I mean, we're talking the government of the day admitting that they have a culture of misusing public money. And that is an extreme level of corruption, a finding by a potential report from the Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, and a government that's been in power for 8 years that will never change its character. They've been in for 8, they want to be in for 12. They've been misusing public funds for the best part of that time, and now they say it's no problem and smugly and arrogantly won't answer any questions on it. Victoria deserves better than this, Blake. We're coming out of COVID. We need a government that's focused on Victorians, on our ambulance crisis, on keeping our kids at school. That's what my government will focus on, not the Premier's government that's focused on ripping Victorians off.
We're heading towards a state election later this year. Would it not be better to focus on policies rather than unproven allegations?
Well, nothing's unproven about it. You're talking about a corruption commission. These are not a nobody group of individuals. This is the Corruption Commission, Blake. When the Corruption Commission has a draft report that says that the government of the day accepts they have a problem with misusing public funds, then we have a problem. And the problem is the government. More the point, the attitude of it. And the guy in charge who won't answer questions on it, we got a problem. The way to fix it is to get a new government, a government that actually takes Victorians and their concerns seriously. That's what the Liberals and Nationals will do.
All right, Matthew Guy, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Pleasure, thank you.
And it should be noted the Premier's office declined our request for a live chat with Daniel Andrews this afternoon. In a stark warning for shoppers, supermarket giant Coles has warned grocery prices will keep rising for the rest of the year. The cost of living hike hitting not just Australia but around the world. And as Chris Reason reports, it's leading to an increase in crime.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, yesterday's inflation figures jump came as little surprise to most people, just confirmation of what we've been feeling at the checkouts for months. But as the Coles CEO warned things would only get worse, we're already getting reports from some just how bad it is out in the community at the moment. Petrol theft is starting to noticeably pick up in recent months, according to service station owners, with fuel prices rising 11% for the quarter and 35% for the last 12 months. Incidents like these are on the increase. Management here at the Budget Petrol service station in Chippendale, Sydney, say it's up threefold for them in the last month alone.
I think people are struggling out there, you know, with the increase in inflation and cost of living going up, and as a result, people don't want to pay for things. Do you know what I mean? They're coming in, they're trying to save money.
Now, supermarket giant Coles has warned, meanwhile, that the pain doesn't look like going anywhere soon, with the CEO, Stephen Kane, saying today he expects grocery prices will keep rising for the rest of the year, although he added they were aiming to keep their prices well under the current 5.3% increase of the last quarter. Shoppers told us today that they had certainly been feeling those increases.
Fruit and veg.
Fruit and veg.
Really. I mean, $8-9 for a cabbage is a bit rich.
Well, fruit mainly, you know. Like we were just here at the shops here a minute ago, and a punnet of strawberries was $10.
Gone through the roof.
You'd noticed.
Especially meat and vegetables.
Now, the figures released by the ABS yesterday showed the increases of 2.1% for the quarter, 5.1% for the year, the worst in some 20 years. Everyone now looking to see what the next moves of the Reserve Bank will be to try and slow that inflation down, with most predicting that they will make their first steps to increase interest rates as early as next Tuesday. Back to you.
Leading doctors say Melbourne parents are being hoodwinked when it comes to baby food. We'll discuss next. Also, why this wrong-way driver won't face charges. And the Free Photo Festival set to capture Melbourne's attention. Stay with us, live across Victoria. A medical episode is being blamed for this frightening incident on the Princes Freeway last night. This driver was being pursued by police in the emergency lane near Laverton.
Oh, look at the drip. Oh! What the did you see what it did?
Police say they will not be laying charges. There are heightened fears the Reserve Bank will lift interest rates in the wake of that inflation surge. The government today defended how it's handled the economic impacts of the pandemic, as Labor vowed to go further.
There's a temporary cut to fuel excise. There's a few one-off payments. All of these run out, coincidentally, just after the federal election or in a few months' time. In contrast, Labor wants to permanently help families.
So we are still feeling the effects of the rather extraordinary economic times that we are living in. Our strong economic management has enabled us to put a shield up against a lot of these pressures.
After spending 7 days in isolation, Labor leader Anthony Albanese is expected to be back on the campaign trail tomorrow. A new survey has found almost half of Australian parents believe ready-made baby foods are as healthy as homemade options. We're joined live now by Anthea Rhodes from the Royal Children's Hospital. Anthea, are those parents right?
Unfortunately, they're not right. But what we did learn is just how common ready-made baby foods are for Aussie kids, with over half of children eating these products at least once a week. And for 1 in 5, it's almost every day. Parents, unfortunately, are being misled. 3/4 of parents think that these are a healthy choice. And one of the reasons is the marketing and the claims that are on the packages that actually influence parents at the checkout when they're making a decision about what to feed their kids. So we really need to see some changes here in the form of regulation.
Let's talk high sugar foods in some of these products. How do they affect toddlers in particular?
Many of these products contain high amounts of harmful sugars. An example would be 5, 6 or even 7 teaspoons in a single serving or pouch product. If you imagine children eating 2 or 3 of these over the day, that rapidly adds up. And we know that when children eat sugars, it can actually prime their palate towards sweetened foods, not just in the short term, but as a lifelong habit. And of course, lots of sugar leads to problems with teeth, gums, dental hygiene, as well as unhealthy weight gain and all the issues that come with that for kids well into adulthood. So this is a really serious issue, and we need to see change to help protect those youngest of children who are eating things that are not healthy for them, even though parents think they're doing the right thing.
What are some easy homemade alternatives for time-poor parents?
It's really, really hard. Blake, I've got kids myself, and the main reason parents do turn to ready-made products is convenience. So we have to remember that this is likely to be part of the mix all of the time. So a great tip for parents is learning how to make healthier choices if they are choosing ready-made food products. Have a look at the nutrition information panel, work out how much sugar might be in that product, have a think about which one's going to be the healthier choice. And then, of course, do try and mix it up with other things that you might make or prepare at home. Fresh fruit and veg is always a good option. It doesn't have to be fancy. Regular family food is absolutely okay for young children and toddlers.
All right, Dr. Anthony Rhodes, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Telstra will cough up more than $2 million after overcharging thousands of customers. The telco has been forced to repay customers $1.73 million and fined more than $500,000 after an investigation from the regulator. More than 11,000 customers were issued inaccurate bills, despite Telstra being ordered to comply with billing accuracy rules. Melbourne is getting a makeover ahead of a major international photography festival. The huge public exhibition gets underway tomorrow and is spread across 90 locations. Here's Christy Cooper.
Melbourne is looking a little bit different at the moment, Blake. If you wander around the city, you can't miss the huge and stunning photography works everywhere you look. It's all part of Photo 2022, an international festival of photography right here in Melbourne. I'm joined now by Elias Redstone, Artistic Director. Elias, where can people see these beautiful works?
As you say, it's everywhere. We've installed photography on the streets of Melbourne, on the sides of buildings, down laneways, and that festival continues into galleries, so people can step inside commercial galleries, big public galleries, and then immerse themselves further into some of the most incredible photography from around the world.
Tell me about the theme that they're all centred around.
It's all centred around one epic theme, being human. Across the whole festival, we're exploring what it means to be human today, what brings us together, what unites us, and what makes us unique as individuals. So there are 123 artists presenting work across 90 exhibitions. Most of that work is brand new, has never been seen before. We've commissioned 24 artists to make new work exclusively for this festival. And it's a great time to gather your friends and explore over the next 24 days while the festival is live.
And this has been a little while coming.
Yes, it has. The first festival was supposed to be in 2020. We postponed that at the last minute to 21 between lockdowns. We delivered that, but now we can deliver the full festival as we imagined it to be. So we're also introducing a whole load of firsts this time round. We're bringing photography to new locations around Melbourne, from South Bank Promenade to the courtyard of the old Melbourne Jail to Brand Market, and right here all along Spring Street. So I'd urge anyone to have a look on our website, photo.org.au, scan the maps and go out and explore the festival.
Thank you so much, Elias. If you want to check it out, it's on for the next 3.5 weeks and it's spread right throughout the state, including in regional Victoria. Blake?
Christy, thank you. Up next, a new warning for aspirin users. Also, Sonia Marinelli takes us inside David Jones' transformed flagship store. Plus, Jane Bunn and Peter Mitchell join us soon as well. In breaking news, a 90-year-old great-grandfather has been spared jail after shooting a tradie over a business dispute. Paolo Minici was captured on CCTV pulling a handgun from his pocket before he fired 2 shots at the man who dumped rubbish at his Ravenhall scrapyard in 2020. The victim can later be seen cradling his wounded arm. The elderly gunman was fined $20,000, the judge saying he's best served putting the incident behind him. There is new medical advice over the use of aspirin to prevent heart attacks and stroke. Newly released American guidelines recommend against it for the over 60s. A study has found taking low-dose aspirin every day does not significantly reduce the risk of a first heart attack or stroke in a patient and carries an increased risk of internal bleeding. The research breaks from more than 30 years of widely accepted medical guidance. Here in Australia, the advice is to seek the help of your medical professional before making any decision. One of Australia's most iconic department stores is undergoing a game-changing transformation. David Jones's Bourke Street store has today revealed the first phase of its reimagined design. Here's Sonia Marinelli.
Well, I'm standing in the newly renovated level 3 of David Jones' flagship store here in Bourke Street, and I'm lucky to be here with its CEO, Scott Fife. Scott, congratulations. It looks fantastic. What have you done?
Oh, well, this is the first phase of our investment into Burke Street. Today, I'm delighted to say we welcomed the customers into Burke Street. This is the first phase. It's our international and designer floor of footwear and accessories. And we've brought and curated the best brands in the world together for our customers today. And I was delighted to open the doors at 10 o'clock this morning and see so many customers engaging with us.
And of course, it looks a little different. What are some of the changes you've made to the building itself?
The piano is an iconic one. It brings people into the store. It brings a smile to people's face. So that'll be a permanent fixture in Burke Street going forward, as well as exposing some of the heritage parts. The building itself is obviously very old, 1851. We've exposed the windows so that we can actually show the customers natural daylight, bring optimism and bring joy back into the CBD of Melbourne.
Now this is just stage one of the redevelopment. What's next?
So we've got lots of phases to go. We've got men's, kids home, they all come, and delighted to say in October we'll be actually launching the flower show for the first time in the CBD of Melbourne. We've done it for many years and it's an iconic event in Sydney, but we're bringing it to Melbourne this year really to give us that elevation as we run into Christmas.
And just how confident are you that this is enough to lure shoppers back into the city, back into your store? Of course, we've become very accustomed to online shopping now, haven't we? Very comfortable with getting our items delivered at home. So what are you doing here to attract people back in?
Well, we've got a digital and a physical journey for our customers. We know everyone's been shopping digitally for the last 2 years. It's the physical engagement and experiential that customers are loving. And actually over events like Easter, Christmas, Mother's Day is just about to come. We've got opportunities for customers really to engage with us, and it's shop the whole experience at David Jones.
Congratulations, Scott. Good luck with the next stage of the upgrade. The level here, level 3, is open for business now. Customers are already shopping up a storm. Back to you in the studio.
Let's take a look at how traffic's going this afternoon.
Good afternoon, it's Hayley Steele in the Fork Traffic Centre. We've got a multi-vehicle collision on the Westgate Freeway citybound at the Power Street exit, closing off a lane with delays building quickly, and a broken down truck on the Tulla Freeway outbound just after the Balti Bridge. Looking for the best Melbourne restaurants? Go fooding with the Fork app and get up to 50% off food right now. Download the Fork app and book now. T's and C's apply.
Jane Barnes at the weather wall. Jane, what's the latest?
Well, Blake, the grey sky is on its way out, and now we head into warm and humid sunshine, but the next big change is due tomorrow night. The humidity picked up overnight, so it couldn't drop below 16.5. After 22, the grey sky is starting to break up. We'll have sunshine by sunset, and that's a precursor of what we'll experience tomorrow. The grey covered much of Victoria for yet another day. Underneath, just very light patchy rain after a few millimetres in the north overnight. Sunshine is returning to the far west, and despite the cloud, all parts out there are fairly warm for late April. The warmer air is thanks to a high to our east. It'll remain warm until a cold front moves through, and they are approaching from the west. There's also tropical moisture pouring in from both the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Look at this building northwest cloud band. So we certainly do have rain on the way. The current spit of rain clears overnight. It will be warm, humid and sunny tomorrow. That's ahead of a band of rain with embedded thunderstorms. Now it should be making it up to these areas here by late on Friday night. So all the area here to the east remains dry tomorrow, while it is pouring in the west. It keeps moving through on Saturday. Steady rain for several hours with the risk of a thunderstorm. It clears Melbourne early morning and eastern Victoria during the afternoon. Now, this was this morning's projection into the new data just coming in now, so I'll analyse that in our next hour, bring you the latest projections of how much to expect in the news at 6. Around the nation tomorrow, still showery in Brisbane, but Sydney, Canberra mostly dry. Hobart dry for the day, rain at night. Rain starts in Adelaide in the afternoon and it clears Perth. To Victoria, warm and humid sunshine gradually replaced by rain and thunderstorms. That spreads to the central parts during the evening. Heavy falls if you are directly underneath a storm. So in Melbourne, we're warm, we're humid, it's sunny at peaks in the mid-20s, but rain and storms develop late afternoon and then it is a wet Friday night.
I'll take that for 24 during the day. Thank you, Jane. Let's head to Peter Mitchell in the newsroom to see what's coming up at 6.
Thanks, Blake. Coming up at 6, we talk to the mother of an autistic teenager bashed at Caroline Springs. Hear what she has to say about teen violence in the western suburbs.
There was 3 quite older and larger guys that had approached him from behind. They had viciously grabbed him and violently assaulted him.
We also have the verdict from the Love Machine shooting. A warning about puppy scams after a Deer Park man was arrested. Police believe there may be more victims. Changes coming to senior school education. A special report on credit cards, which ones are offering the best deals. And Tim Watson will have all the teams first for this weekend's AFL round. All those stories and more coming up at 6. Blake.
Thanks, Pete. We'll see you then. For now, from the 7 News team, thanks for making us part of your Thursday afternoon. Goodbye.